Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to completely crack the code on your yearly cholesterol test and reveal the hidden numbers that actually determine your heart health. Listen, if you've ever looked at your lab results and wondered if you're really getting the whole story, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, picture this. You go to your doctor, you get your routine lipid panel back, and you look straight at that standard LDL number, right? We've all been trained to look at it, and medical guidelines have relied on this single metric for decades. But what if that number is hiding a massive, dangerous blind spot? Today, we're diving into the science that shows exactly why relying solely on LDL might not be enough, and what modern lipidology tells us you should be looking at instead. Section 1. The truth about cholesterol. And spoiler alert, it's really not the enemy you think it is. Let's establish a baseline here, because cholesterol gets a really bad rap. Your liver actually works hard to make cholesterol because it's fundamentally essential to keeping you alive. Without it, your cell membranes would literally lose their structure and fluidity. It's the critical building block for major hormones. Think adrenal hormones like cortisol and sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. To put its importance into perspective, your brain contains about 20% of your body's total cholesterol just to function properly. Plus, it's the starting material your skin uses to synthesize vitamin D when you go out in the sun. So the substance itself, not the problem at all. The problem is entirely about how it's transported. Section 2, the LDL blind spot. It really comes down to amount versus delivery. Now, what's super interesting about this next concept is understanding what your standard LDL number is actually measuring when you get that printout. When people talk about heart disease risk, they're usually referring to LDL-C. That C stands for cholesterol. This measurement tells you how much total cholesterol cargo is being carried inside your circulating LDL particles. But here's the critical flaw. It only measures the volume of the cargo. It tells you absolutely nothing about the actual number of delivery vehicles or particles that are carrying that cargo through your bloodstream. To understand why this creates such a massive blind spot, let's compare person A and person B. Both of them have the exact same standard LDL-C score of 100. To a doctor just glancing at a standard panel, these two individuals look completely identical. Their risk profile appears exactly the same. But let's take a closer look at the biological reality here. Person A's cargo is packed really efficiently into 1,000 circulating particles. Person B has the exact same amount of cholesterol cargo, but it's spread out across 1,500 circulating particles. Inside their bodies, they have drastically different environments. So why does that particle count matter so much? Well, atherosclerosis begins when these circulating particles enter the arterial wall and get trapped. Therefore, having more particles means you have far more opportunities for them to crash into the arterial wall, trigger an inflammatory response, and eventually form dangerous plaque. Person B has significantly more particles bouncing around, which dramatically increases their risk, even with a normal score. Section 3, ApoB, the particle number. This is our hidden culprit. This brings us to the missing piece of the medical mystery, the marker that tells us exactly how many of those dangerous particles are actually circulating. It's called Apolipoprotein B, or just ApoB for short. Think of ApoB as a permanent name tag attached to the outside of all the potentially dangerous plaque-forming particles in your bloodstream. This doesn't just include your standard LDL. It also flags very low-density lipoproteins, intermediate-density lipoproteins, and lipoprotein A. Basically, if a particle has the potential to cause plaque, it has an ApoB protein attached to it. And this brings us to the absolute golden rule of lipidology, the key that unlocks this entire concept. Every single one of those atherogenic particles contains exactly one ApoB molecule. Never 0, never 2, exactly 1. Because of that rule, by simply measuring the ApoB in your blood, your doctor no longer has to guess your risk based on the total volume of your cholesterol cargo. Instead, we're getting an exact, literal head count of every single potential plaque-forming unit in your circulation. It completely removes the guesswork and gives you a direct look at the true threat level inside your arteries. Section 4, trucks versus cargo. Let's look at the highway analogy. To make this crystal clear, because it really is a huge shift in how we think about heart health, imagine two different highways. Highway A, over on the left, has 100 trucks, and each one is carrying 10 boxes, giving us a total of 1,000 boxes of cargo. Highway B, on the right, has 200 trucks, but each is only carrying 5 boxes. That also gives us a total of 1,000 boxes. Both highways are transporting the exact same amount of total cargo, but Highway B is jammed with twice as many physical trucks driving on the road. Let's map this directly to your bloodstream. Those boxes of cargo, that represents the cholesterol you measure as your standard LDL-C score. Standard tests only weigh the boxes, completely ignoring the traffic jam. But the trucks, the physical vehicles actually driving on the highway carrying that cargo, those represent your ApoB particles. Now, if cardiovascular risk is caused by trucks crashing off the road and into your artery walls, which highway would you rather live next to? Highway B is profoundly more dangerous because there are simply way more trucks that can potentially crash despite having the exact same cargo count as Highway A. The risk is in the traffic, not the freight. That is exactly why major lipid guidelines all across the globe, including the European Society of Cardiology, now recognize ApoB as a far stronger predictor of risk than LDL-C alone. And this is particularly crucial for folks dealing with diabetes, obesity, or metabolic syndrome. Why? Because these individuals often have a really high number of very small cholesterol-depleted particles. Their standard panel looks perfectly fine because the total cargo count is low, but it completely misses the dangerously high truck count zooming through their bloodstream. Section 5. Taking action on ApoB. Let's talk about actually lowering your particle count. Now that we know what the real culprit is, and we know we need to clear up the traffic on our arterial highways, what can we actually do in our daily lives to get those ApoB numbers down? Well, you can achieve this through some very specific, actionable lifestyle steps. Let's tie it back to our analogy. First, reducing saturated fat intake is absolutely vital because excess saturated fat signals your liver to manufacture more trucks. Second, eating soluble fiber, things like oats, beans, lentils, and apples, acts like a detour. It binds to bile acids in your gut, effectively pulling those trucks off the highway and removing them from your system entirely. Third, emphasizing whole plant foods improves your overall lipid metabolism. And fourth, improving your weight and insulin sensitivity strongly associates with a lower ApoB. You're essentially clearing the metabolic traffic jam. Now here's a totally free, highly actionable pro tip for you. ApoB tests aren't always ordered on standard panels yet, but if your doctor doesn't order one, you can look at your routine lab results right now and calculate your non-HDL cholesterol. You just take your total cholesterol number and subtract your HDL, which is the good cholesterol. The number left over captures the cholesterol in all the bad particles. It acts as an incredibly strong, totally free surrogate for ApoB that gives you far more insight than just looking at LDL-C alone. At the end of the day, we are moving away from the old medical model of just worrying about the cholesterol content, the cargo. We are stepping into a highly accurate modern paradigm of managing the actual particle number burden. It is all about reducing the physical vehicles interacting with your arteries over time to truly protect your heart. So, when you look at your next lipid panel, I want to leave you with this final crucial question to discuss with your doctor. Are you just measuring the cargo, or are you actually counting the trucks? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll catch you next time.